So Samsung's latest Galaxy S series blowers have generally been greeted about as warmly as an eggy fart in a lift. And the number of actual upgrades on this here Galaxy S25 versus last year's S24 can pretty much be counted on one finger. But it is a biggie, the fresh new Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset, which replaces the turdy Exodus effort from before. But is the Galaxy S25 a dinky delight, or has that frosty reception been all too apt? Well, I've had my Sims secreted inside for just over a week now, so here's my Galaxy S25 review, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, undoubtedly the best thing about Samsung's vanilla Galaxy S25 versus the Plus and the Ultra is the fact that it's one of the only compact handsets you'll actually find these days. And 6.2 inches might not sound particularly tiny, but compared to the bloody Plus and the Ultra models, it's positively microscopic. I've always been a fan of smaller smartphones, so having the S25 clutched in my grip just gives me that lovely warm, glowing feeling deep inside my belly. Like a small child unwrapping their first present on Christmas Day, or Nigel Farage seeing a refugee being torn limb from limb by a pack of rabid wolves. And the Samsung Galaxy S25 is impressively slender as well, just a cockroach's chuff over 7 mils now, as long as you ignore the pokey out camera bits, that is. Which thankfully only stick out a wee bit, and when the S25 is resting on a desk or a table and you're jabbing away at the screen, thankfully there's not too much shifting around rocking motion going on. The Galaxy S25 certainly feels like a premium device as well, as you'd kind of hope from a phone that costs 800 bloody quid. It's got a decent wee heft for such a dinky device, and of course you've got Samsung's usual Armour aluminium frame, plus a bit of Gorilla Glass Victus 2 front and back, and so far, touch wood, this Sammy blower is still looking box fresh from all angles, even without the benefits of a pre-installed screen protector, which always makes me a wee bit nervous. Of course, I would still say, as always, slap a screen protector on there if you can, because there's nothing worse than having an ugly gouge right there down the middle of your bloody display that you have to stare at every single day of your life. A full IP68 water resistance again, so no worries if you want to do some TikToking in the shower or whatever, it's all good. As usual, Samsung is offering the Galaxy S25 in a respectable selection of colours, and I'm still a big fan of this here mint model. It does basically just look silver in dimmer light, but out in the warm glow of day, it's got that lovely, fresh, greeny hue. Gives me a proper craving for a stick of Wrigley's. Now, no real changes when it comes to the screen tech. You've once again got a dynamic AMOLED 2X display with a Full HD Plus resolution, just like the S24. At 6.2 inches, it is charmingly compact. And yeah, movie fans and gamers will get a clearer view of the action on pretty much any other smartphone. But I was happy enough watching nerdy anime or hardcore pornography on here. Did I say hardcore pornography? I meant reruns of Last of the Summer Wine. It's your typical Samsung output here, so warm, bold and easy on the eye. And of course gorgeous contrast as well. No Dolby Vision support as usual, but full HDR10 streaming support. And you can tweak the colours in the display settings if you want to. If you want to just dial back the warmth of those tones a wee bit, though it doesn't really make a massive difference, to be perfectly honest. And no, unlike the Galaxy S25 Ultra, there's no armor glass here, so reflections aren't tempered at all. But thankfully that screen does peak at over 2000 nits now, so comfortable enough for outdoor use. However, when it comes to the PWM dimming, Samsung once again hasn't commented on the exact rate here on the Galaxy S25's display, but it sounds, by all accounts, that it hasn't improved at all over the previous generation, or if it has improved, it's only improved a wee bit. Now personally, I'm fortunate enough to not be sensitive to OLED flicker at all, so I've had no problems using the S25 in a completely pitch black room for a good couple of hours continuously, be it streaming a bit of Netflix or YouTube or just reading or whatever. And if you are sensitive to OLED flicker, just bear in mind that the S25 might not be as good for you as some other flagships. And as for the stereo speaker setup here on the Galaxy S25, well, this thing might be dinky, but let me tell you, it can absolutely out some proper full-on audio. Certainly loud enough when you max out that volume to clearly hear what's going on in your bit of YouTube or whatever, even if there's an impromptu wicked rendition going on right behind you. Any owners of small musically inclined children should know exactly what I'm talking about there. Let me just give you a wee taster. No big secret that I'm not exactly a massive fan of the iPhone SE 3. Frankly, I think it's a tragedy right up there with the day that Elon Musk's dad forgot to pull out. Now obviously not quite as loud as some bigger rivals, could do with being a wee bit more bassy as well. And yes, the bottom speaker does punch slightly harder than the top speaker, but overall great stuff for something that's this dinky. Now the true highlight of the Galaxy S25 is the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy that's crammed inside of here. And yes, it is the 8 Elite for Galaxy because basically the two prime cores have been given a bit of a kick up the twat and overclocked. And Samsung is now stuffing 12 gigs of RAM in all of its devices, including the base S25, to help power all of that lovely AI bollocks. But it also helps with any gaming type shenanigans that you might fancy, including of course a wonderful spot of Wuthering Waves. Nothing like beating the snot out of random wildlife to cheer you up on a miserable February morning. With those visuals maxed out, I found that the Galaxy S25 could maintain a perfectly fluid frame rate. A very different experience to last year's Galaxy S24, which was powered by that Exynos bollocks and spaffed out a pretty choppy affair in the likes of Genshin and Wuthering Waves at times. I found that Wuthering played fine on the more compact screen as well, everything was perfectly responsive. And Samsung has also managed to find room inside of that slimmer chassis for a slightly enlarged vapor chamber. It's now 15% bigger, apparently, compared with the S24. And this combined with the impressive Snapdragon smarts definitely does the job, because this S25 never overheated, even when I was shooting loads of 4K video or gaming for well over an hour. So thankfully the overclocking doesn't seem to have any real world impact, causing any throttling issues with the likes of Wuthering Waves, even when running again on those lovely maxed out visuals. And oh yeah, Samsung has finally sorted out its gaming modes, so you no longer have to dig around in the notifications to get this up. You got a decent selection of features in there, including customizable performance shenanigans for each of your individual games. But what about the battery life? Well, often a bone of contention for the smaller, more compact Galaxy S series member, because it's got a dinky 4000 mAh battery, exactly the same as last year's S24. But gotta say, this past week, the S25 has both surprised and impressed me. Most days I get around 5 to 6 hours of screen on time, plenty of mixed use, so video streaming, good bit of camera play, obviously testing out the optics, occasional video chat, all that kind of shenanigans, and I usually end the day with around 25 to 30% battery life remaining, as long as I haven't been gaming on the thing. And that's compared with previous dinky S-series smartphones where I've generally been balls deep in power saving mode by around sort of 7-8 PM. And yes, even when the S25's hibernating, I'm usually streaming something on Audible or Spotify in the background as well, so impressive stuff all around. And yes, I have gone into the app settings and disabled background power management for quite a few of the apps as well, just to make sure I kept on getting the notifications and everything. Nothing was being put to sleep without my explicit consent. However, I have found that gaming on the S25 does tend to sap the battery life at an inconsistent rate. Sometimes when I'm playing Wuthering Waves, it'll only drop by about sort of 25-30% an hour. Other times it's closer to sort of 40%. So yeah, if you are going to be playing some Genshin, some Wuthering, something like that on this thing, you're probably gonna not want to stray too far from the nearest plug socket. Of course, sadly, Samsung hasn't bothered to update the S25 when it comes to the charging speeds, so you've still got the super fast 25-watt charging. It's actually just as super fast as a one-legged granny wearing a concrete girdle. And of course, you've got the 15-watt wireless charging support as well, and that is now Qi 2, so the S25, one of very few smartphones that actually supports that. I have noticed that when I slap the Galaxy S25 just on my regular Qi charger, sometimes it stops charging at around the sort of 70 to 80% mark for absolutely bugger all reason that I can ascertain. Doesn't appear to have anything to do with any adaptive charging features, because I've had a good fiddle about with those in the background. So yeah. As for the software side of things, well, it's Samsung's own OneUI 7 slapped on top of Android 15. This will immediately look familiar to any Samsung fans out there, with a few key differences, like the separation of the notifications panel and the control center. You can switch that back to the original effort if you don't like it. And of course, Samsung once again doubling up on features that Android already provided. So you got the smart things, smart home control, you got Samsung Pay, which I just immediately friggin' delete, because otherwise I end up constantly accidentally swiping it into view. So it's the usual gripes. On the flip side, you do get a full 7 years of OS updates and guaranteed security patching as well, which is one of the more generous offerings out there. And frankly, I don't know many people who would go as long as 7 years with the same smartphone, but if you want to, you bloody can. And of course that AI is fully integrated in here now as well. There's bugger all escaping it. So you got likes of the circle to search and Gemini shenanigans, which is in pretty much all Androids now. All of the original Galaxy AI features from the S24 series are present and correct, and in some cases slightly more updated and upgraded, like the translation and transcription now supports more languages. And of course you can also quickly get yourself a bit of a morning, midday or evening brief, which isn't exactly a game changer. It mostly just lets you know if you're going to get absolutely bloody soaked taking the kids to school or whatever. You can also have this morning brief read out to you by Bixby when your alarm goes off in the morning, but believe me, you really don't want that to happen. Because let me tell you, Bixby is just far too chirpy at 6 AM, especially when reading out some of the latest news headlines.
Hello, it's currently 9:02 AM. Here's the latest news from Google. Teenager appears in court charged with school murder.
Wait, what?
Family of dad shot, dead outside gym. Question why this happened. Liverpool Echo.
I just absolutely pray that Bixby doesn't replace my doctor at any point. Good news, Mr. Spurt. You've got cancer of the scrotum. Anyway, yes, lots of AI shenanigans packed on here, but I've covered pretty much all of that in my in-depth Galaxy S25 tips and tricks guide, so go check out that video if you want a closer look at all of that. I don't want to bang on about it yet again. Oh, and also one other wee gripe I've got with the S25 is that Samsung hasn't bothered to upgrade the storage in this thing. So once again, the base model comes with just 128 gigs of the stuff, not expandable as usual, which for a flagship smartphone in 2025, I mean, there are several words for it and all of them I'd probably have to censor out, so we'll just leave it at that. And also, there's still no ultra-wideband tech crammed into this thing, so if you own a Tesla and you want to unlock it with your smartphone, well, tough bollocks really, just use a key like a normal person, or upgrade to the Plus and the Ultra, because they've got it. Now, the camera tech also hasn't been upgraded at all for this generation. The Galaxy S25 has a 50 meg main sensor, backed by a 12 meg ultra-wide-angle shooter, and a 10 meg telephoto jobby, which takes over when you hit the 3x zoom level. Now, the camera app again will be familiar to Samsung fans beyond the fact that most of the wee toggles have now been crammed here at the bottom, which is good, makes it easier to use one-handed. You've got all the standard stuff like portrait mode, food mode, night mode, which is automatically activated in auto mode anyway, and then the full-on dedicated pro mode. Definitely well worth bouncing into if you do want to get a very precise kind of shot, fiddle around with the saturation levels, etc. But for my testing, I did what most people will do, just stuck to the default photo mode. And Samsung's Scene Optimizer was switched off, although there's still plenty of processing on display here. Sometimes sharpening, but mostly saturation to try and brighten up the visuals. I did still notice a lot of noise and overall lack of fine detail in my more ambient snaps, or also when the S25 had some strong contrast to deal with. You certainly get a lot more grain on here than you do with many other Android flagships. And likewise, the Galaxy S25 hasn't proven itself a reliable shooter for kids, pets, and basically anything that isn't completely inanimate, either in the regular or the portrait mode, which again, quite heavy processing there. Any movement will usually mean quite blurry results and a picture that's only good for one thing, hoying straight in the bin. The telephoto shooter is handy for getting closer to your subject, and it can spaff out some good looking snaps when the focus behaves itself, but again, my photos were sometimes a bit noisy or soft if the lighting wasn't ideal. And also don't punch in beyond around the 15x zoom level because things get rather fuzzy after that. And that ultra-wide angle shooter seems to be fine, but again, similar story to the other sensors, you'll get plenty of noise if the lighting isn't great. Now, Samsung has of course improved its AI editing tools, including some slightly more reliable human obliteration and that new best shot gubbins, as well as the ability to create your own filters using any photo out there. But again, I covered all of that lovely stuff in my Galaxy S25 tips and tricks guide, so again, go check out that video for all you need to know. As for the video, you can once again shoot up to 8K footage, but I mostly stuck to 4K, shot at 60 frames per second. And there's benefits from sharp visuals as well as Samsung's excellent stabilization. That smooth zoom is one of my favorite additions, helped by the near seamless transition between the different lenses. However, at night time, the S25 does again struggle with grain and the visual quality dips rather rapidly. Again, it's the Camera Pros who are catered for here because you've now got a bit of log support, so you can do a good bit of color correction in edit, get your video looking exactly how you want it. And Samsung has also bunged on an audio eraser tool, which I've not been too impressed with so far. It certainly can't do much with lots of background gusty wind action. It basically just morphs it into some sort of nasty electronic distortion instead, while it also has minimal impact on any crowd guff. And you've got yourself a 12 megapixel front-facing selfie shooter here on the Galaxy S25, which again can capture up to 4K Ultra HD video at 60 frames per second. But again, those visuals do get rather grainy and soft when the lighting isn't fantastic, so I definitely stick to daytime shooting if I were you. And there you have it, my lovelies. That in a tasty wee nutshell is Samsung's fresh new Galaxy S25 flagship phone. And yes, very little has actually been upgraded in terms of the hardware, etc. versus last year's S24. But for me, the fact that you've got the Snapdragon 8 Elite in there is a massive boost to the performance and the battery life, certainly versus the old Exynos model. So I'm certainly enjoying the S25 a lot more than I was enjoying the S24. Of course, it is a shame that Samsung hasn't upgraded the S25 in other ways, the measly amount of storage and the fact that the camera tech is really lagging behind some of the other flagships out there. Bit of a bum, really. But you know, if you're after a compact, fresh new smartphone in 2025, well, the S25 is going to be one of your few options. The Xiaomi 15, hopefully, lingering just on the horizon. Anyway, that's what I reckon. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on the Galaxy S25 down in the comments below. Please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone. Love you.